Hey guys, so this week was a little bit of a doozy. We had 3 readings, and the first one is on Pascal's wager. Sorry if I didn't say his name right, but that's how I interpreted it. So, first off, his wager is basically just explaining the difference between believing and not believing. So, if you decide to believe in that God is true, then if you're correct, then you get to have eternal life. But if you're wrong, then you don't really lose anything. And then if you decide to not believe that he's not real and you're wrong, then you go to eternal damnation. But if you decide not to believe and you're right, then nothing happens. You didn't win, you didn't lose. You're fine. And that's what he's kind of explaining in this, is that they have equal pros and cons. So basically, one way, if you're wrong in one of them, if you're right in the other, nothing happens. And vice versa, nothing happens. But then, if you are right and if you are wrong about if there is a God, then you're right. And if you're right about that and you didn't believe, then you're wrong. Then one's going to be really good, which is going to have an eternal life. And then the other one is about going to eternal damnation. So, there is a pretty strong, heavy losing part in that one, but the pros and cons are basically thinned out together, and that's what he's trying to explain in his wager. Our next one was also a little doozy for me. It's the duty to believe according to evidence. So, first of all, his evidential is principle is a moral principle that holds belief not justified by the evidence are immoral. So what I took from that is that if the evidence are immoral, then it's not justified. Then that's what makes it the principle, because it can't be justified. And so he just goes on to talk about if it's morally responsible for, are we morally responsible for what we believe? And what he believes, which is Wood, is that anything at all can be claimed without worrying if it's wrong or right. And that's what he believes in philosophy, is how we should look at things, because you're answering questions in philosophy that you don't know if you're going to be wrong or right. But that is what you might have found evidence for, or what you might believe. So this is why you're saying it in philosophy. But what really stood out to me in his argument is that it doesn't matter what you believe, is we should at least care about the reasons for what you believe. So if you believe that God is true, then you should know your reasonings for it. You should be able to go to the Bible and be like, this is one of the reasons why I believe God is true, because this has happened. And if you believe that reasoning, then that is great. But you need to understand the reasonings for yourself and for others, just simply so you have maybe not evidence, but substantial reasoning behind why you believe it. Also, he talks about how it's just important to appreciate the importance of moral principle. He just wants us to understand that, no matter what you choose, there's always going to be one person believe this, and there's going to be one person believe that. But are you going to be morally responsible for what you believe? So if you grew up in a Baptist church, and then you decide that you don't want to be Baptist anymore, and you want to believe in something else, is that going to mess with your morals? Is that going to mess with your guilt? Is that going to mess with you? And that's what I took from this passage. If you took something different, I really would like to hear, because this passage was a real big struggle for me. And then our question number 3 is to simply argue if it's morally acceptable to believe religious claims. So I feel like that if you want to believe, then you should at least know the reasoning. So I agree with Wood on what he had to talk about, as if you want to believe, then you should have your reasonings for it. And that's my argument, is that I believe if you believe that your faith and your religious claims are accurate, then you're good. And for Susie, if her faith believes that she should be held eligible for that, then she should believe that. If that's what her faith tells her, then she should. And that is just what I believe in it. You could believe differently, but this is philosophy, and that's how we learn it. Thanks, guys.